Let's get analysis on this story with David Dunn. He's a professor of international politics at the University of Birmingham in the UK. Professor, thanks so much for speaking to us. So when Trump talks about a limited military strike, what exactly does that look like? Is it something similar to what we saw last year during that 12-day war with Israel, which ultimately brought that war to an end?
I think it's unlikely that any military action will be as limited as we saw last year. That was a very discrete set of targets for a very discrete purpose, and Trump gave warning to minimize the loss of life. What we're seeing here is an altogether different proposition. What we might see is the limited use of force to try and coerce the Iranians to get more serious in the negotiations. But even that would be on a scale and magnitude of that would be very considerable in terms of actually the targets that were struck. But even more possible is that actually America seeks to disarm Iran by attacking both its ballistic missiles and its nuclear facilities much more thoroughly than was done last summer, and potentially also attacks leadership targets and the means of control of the regime, so the Revolutionary Guard Corps, as a means of actually allowing a regime change to take place in the country. So yes, Trump talked about a limited strike, but he did so in response to a question about a limited strike. That wasn't his first choice of words. Yes, he said he's considering it. He's also considering a far larger range of options and a far larger form of attack.
Do you think the ultimate goal for Donald Trump here is regime change in Iran? And if that was to be the case, that the Ayatollah is replaced in any way, who would the U.S. be comfortable seeing in positions of power in Iran? And Iran itself, of course, says it's also ready for war if the U.S. strikes.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is that the negotiations are taking place from the Iranian perspective about the nuclear facilities and about limiting enrichment, almost like we're back in 2015. Well, we're no longer in 2015. In 2015, Trump denounced the Iran nuclear deal as being insufficient because it only dealt with the nuclear programs. It didn't deal with them far enough, and as far as he was concerned, it didn't also address ballistic missiles and the support for proxies in the region. Trump wants this regime to address all three of those issues, and ideally also actually to replace the regime because it's persecuting and murdering thousands of its citizens. So I think the two parties are wide apart here because what the Americans want and what the Iranians seem to want to trade on are far apart. I think ideally the Americans would like to seize this opportunity while the regime is weakened, while Iran more broadly is weakened, and actually to have a wholesale change in the power structures in Tehran.
Of course, the knock-on effects of all of that will be immense, not just for the Middle East as a whole, but even domestically in the United States. Trump came into power promising to stop the endless wars, and since he's been in power, it's only been just over a year, his second term. There seems to be more of these conflicts than he had promised before, and in a year where you've got midterm elections coming up in the U.S. in November. How do you think this sits now with the domestic base in the United States?
I think actually what Trump's done is in using force in a very limited way on 7 different occasions in 7 different countries, has to gain a taste for it, again a sense that actually he can use force with impunity. There are no limits on his ability to use force, and he can use force in a way that actually serves his foreign policy positions. So I think while he came into office skeptical of being embroiled in long ground wars, he is prepared to use force in a limited way without putting boots on the ground. And I think he's encouraged to do that. And it may well be the case that actually he sees the opportunity of changing the regime in Iran as something which would give him a boost domestically. He is very unpopular on a whole range of topics. Perhaps he feels, and there's speculation about this, that actually a success in terms of changing the regime, removing a lifelong enemy of America. It's been 47 years since Iran has called for death to America America, death to the great Satan, if he can actually bring about a change in Iran at a time when that regime is weak and vulnerable, perhaps he will see that as a success domestically.
Professor David Dunn, great to get your analysis. Much appreciated. Thank you.